If you're thinking about starting an EV charging business, I like where your head's at. But first, we need to know how much money we can make, right? So today in this video, we're going to talk about how much profit we can make from reselling electricity. All of this advice is real firsthand knowledge from my experience, and it will help you navigate this entire process so much easier. Okay, well, you might be asking, well, how much profit are we going to make from this? How much does electricity cost? What are the margins here? Good. I'm happy you asked that because it's really understanding the electricity costs and the electricity rates in your area. So every city you go to, every area you visit is going to have different rates per kilowatt hour for their electricity. But it's not so simple. It's not like, oh, it's this set price per kilowatt. The cost of electricity, it's fluid. It fluctuates quite a bit. And I go into this in a lot more detail in a step-by-step guide in my course below. So check that out if you want the exact game plan. There's different things like peak demand hours. So, at the highest points, the busiest times a day, electricity will cost more. Like when everybody gets home from work and flips on their TVs and starts cooking, that's usually when electricity per kilowatt hour is the most expensive. There's also different rates per different businesses or properties. So in my experience, the bigger the building, the lower the cost of electricity. I used to do a lot of work with big manufacturing buildings, and I would take a look at their electricity bills, and I'd always see the bigger the building, the more electricity they used, the lower the price was. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's almost like economies of scale, right? The more you buy, the cheaper it is. And these buildings were using tons of electricity, like megawatts. So they were getting their electricity for about half the cost as I was at my apartment. So usually there's 3 tiers of rates that a building will fall into. It's like tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So you'll want to figure that out. But what we're really looking for here is what I call the blended rate. So the electricity costs are fluid. They're going to be, changing up on us all the time. So we want to try to find an average. And that average is what we're going to be depending on to figure out our return on investment. And this is why it's so hard to answer the question, how profitable are EV chargers? Because there's so many moving variables that it's hard to give you a solid answer. The things we want to know are how much we're paying for electricity, how much we can sell the electricity for, how often our chargers are being used, like how many hours per day. And we want to try to leverage all these points to use it to our advantage to make sure that we maximize the amount of profit that we can make. So this means, finding a busy location where lots of people are visiting and spending a couple hours using our chargers. Ideally, they're using the chargers when electricity is cheap for us, so we increase our profit margin. And we live in an area where we can make a healthy profit from reselling the electricity. The more expensive the electricity is in your area usually means there's a lower profit to be made. It also means that usually there's less EVs in the area because it's not as cheap to charge your car. Where I live, the electricity is so cheap that there's tons of EVs and you can make quite a big profit off of reselling the electricity. Usually it's about 3 times the cost. I have a pretty good understanding of the different rates of electricity where I live because, as I said, I used to do work with tons of different buildings, and part of my job was receiving their electricity bills and analyzing how much they're paying. But another way that you can do this is, well, look at your electricity bill, but it's always good to just call the utility provider. They might not be able to give you, a flat answer of what the blended rate is, but they can usually explain how it works. So if they can't give you a straight answer, you might be able to figure it out yourself. And just to back up a little bit, the reason why you need to know all this is because I'm recommending that you sell your electricity per kilowatt. I wouldn't recommend necessarily charging by time. You can do this and it does work in certain situations, but in terms of making a profit, making things easier for both you and the driver who's charging their car, I would recommend charging by the kilowatt hour. Also, as the EV driver, it feels more fair to be paying for the amount of electricity that you're receiving than just the amount of time that you're sitting there. For our charger, we want to make sure that it's as fast as possible because we are charging by the kilowatt hour. So the faster it is per hour, the more money we make per hour. But if there wasn't enough power in the building and you were limited in the kilowatt output that you could have for your charger, if you're able to put your level 2 charger on a 40 amp breaker, then you're good. You're going to be having a kilowatt per hour output of usually around 7 kilowatts. But if there's not enough power in the building and you have to put your charger on a lower breaker, then your charger is going to be slower. And that's when it starts to make a little bit more sense charging by time, because you're not getting a huge kilowatt output, but the driver is going to be sitting there for a while. It's not a great feeling because you want to make sure you have happy customers that get a fast charge. So going with a faster charger is usually the best route. But if we're stuck, then that's another way we could go about it. But for our business, we want to do things right. So we're aiming for a fast charger and we're billing by kilowatt hour. And as always, I'd love if you were to subscribe to the channel and keep following the journey. Thanks so much for checking in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.